for those of you who joined us last year, thank you very, very much. So we've got Rebecca and Brandon and Pamela and Ramon and Raphael and Esther and Judy. I think this is a good starting point. The last time we did this, we talked about Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech, and the whole idea is trying to get a feel for where we are as a people here in Utah in reaching his ultimate goal, which was to have us, integrated as brothers and sisters, where certainly we know what color each other is, but it doesn't matter. It makes no difference at all. And so that's where I think we want to start. Where do you think we are, especially for those who were with us last time? If you feel like the needle has moved at all, or has the needle stayed pretty much where it has been? Brandon, let's start with you.
I mean, as far as the needle goes, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily moved. I mean, when we're talking about, it's been decades since that speech. A year's not that much time, so, I want to be fair to Utah, and I don't think it's necessarily moved. There has been some changes in the political climate, maybe slight ones that have maybe made it a little bit worse, and I think we're going to get into some of this in terms of when we talk about CRT and some of these other issues concerning race. But for me, I haven't seen a real big difference, but it's only been a year.
Pamela, how about you?
Well, I work with events, so obviously, I'm very involved in the creative community as far as that, and, I've seen, bigger spaces for diversity and stuff like that. At least personally, I've seen, that community grow in a way where, culture is being more accepted, people are doing more things that are culturally, improving, right? I think that's the biggest area I've seen it change is we're bringing more things, right? We have All-Star Weekend coming soon, that's going to be a huge cultural push for us. And I think that's kind of those things that are going to start moving those things, because we're moving outside of Utah. I mean, you go to work, you go to school, these are the reasons why people are here. That's why we have any type of culture here, because people are here to play sports, go to school, or go to work. And now we're actually evolving into events and activities and things where different people from different backgrounds can come together and associate, because they all love basketball. They all love, singers or comedy and stuff like that.
Raphael, how about you? Have you noticed any difference?
I think so. I'm gonna kind of go left with this. I noticed differences, but I'd have to say I've noticed more of a difference when it comes to the LGBTQ. Only because I feel like that's not something that's race based. So it's not a white person can be like, hey, I know what it's like to be black. It's different. But when it comes to the LGBT community, right, it's it crosses the boundaries of race. So I think in that arena, there's been some change, some improvement, but it's typically in Utah, I've noticed if it's something to do with police brutality or something like that, then it's you see people kind of talk about it a little bit. But if it has nothing to do with police brutality, it's kind of I'm with you on that. I don't think it's I think it's the same, but it's really hard. I'm not making excuses, but it's really hard when you're in a bubble to see the outside perspective of race relations, especially when you're not exploring outside of that bubble. There's people that explore outside of that bubble, and those same people are needed in order to help move the needle.
So and you mean Utah as the bubble? You mean
as Utah as the bubble as a whole, right? If you have a person that was kind of raised here, that's and never kind of ventured out, it's kind of hard to get an outside perspective of race relations when you don't know anything other than that.
Ramon, where do we stand? I mean, you've got your finger on the pulse of this community.
Like both of them said, I think there's progression and regression in certain areas. I think culturally we're making an effort to find some diversity and bring culture to Utah, as as more people migrate here from different cities, we're trying to make more of an effort, but there's also regression in some of the spots, CRT and different things like that.
How about our new guests? Judy?
So I think in regards to that, with the younger kids or the younger generation, like my kids' ages, so I have 26, 23, and 22, 2 girls and a boy. And their age groups is very accepting. They don't see that big of a difference between black and white or any other races. But there's an age group like my age. I'm in my 50s. So there's an age group that has a hard time like just moving the needle. So it's the kids that are pushing for me, pushing for that. And that's why they are called rebellious, is because they don't agree with most of what their parents or their grandparents believe. So in regards to that. So I think it's for us to actually learn from the younger kids and know how to be more tolerable of each other and embrace each other and count each other as equals.
Esther, is your mom making sense here? Do you agree with her?
Yeah, I agree with her. I feel like I kind of gone back and forth with this topic because I think I thought that needle had kind of moved forward, and then I went to school in California and I was submersed in like kind of the communities that Pamela was kind of talking about. So I was just around more black people, and so I was like, oh yeah, like there's been progress. And then I came back here in 2020, and specifically in Utah, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of sad, because once I started opening up the conversation about being just a black woman in Utah, people didn't believe me. Like people that have known me for a while, people who've adopted black children, and they didn't think that the struggles that we are facing was a reality. And so that was kind of the problem that I noticed, is that there wasn't even acknowledgement of the problem in the first place. So it was really hard to even make it progress.
Rebecca, weigh in on this. Where do you think we've come in the last year or so?
Kind of going off of what Pam has said, I feel like there has been a lot of, push in the entertainment side of things, like with different concerts, like the sports and types of stuff like that. But also going off of what he mentioned, there's just a lack kind of like of awareness. A lot of people that haven't ever stepped foot outside of Utah, people that have been raised, compared to you have black people coming and visiting or moving in, and you're just like, what's going on? And a lot of people just don't know, kind of what to expect or what's different out there, just because they've never really seen anything else.
Well, I do want to follow that up with something, because I am new here, and I feel like for my 2 months here, a lot of times I've felt invisible. So I kind of want to know, have you guys ever felt that while you're here? Because there's like overt and blatant racism, right? Where it's in your face, that's what I'm used to. I'm from the South, but then there's just like, people don't acknowledge you at all.
To caveat to that, no, you're right. There's covert and overt racism. I think, when I think about my perception of myself being in Utah, it's like I need my people, you know what I mean, to embrace me, because it's like you do feel invisible, and I feel like black women are, and I said this last year, the perception is I can understand why you feel that way and how you could feel that way. And then it's like being new, I don't know if you've been around a lot of other like black women or even seen a lot of black women, right? So you really do. It's kind of, I can't speak from that perspective from a black woman, but I hear you and I see you. So it was different for me, but I did feel invisible for the first year I was here, almost, and I ended up connecting with Ramon, and I felt that embrace. And you will feel that way until you are embraced by your own people.
Ryan?
Yeah, I've certainly felt that element of being invisible here in Utah, especially sometimes maybe on a professional level, like just overlooked. I think that stems from maybe people don't find us as capable a lot of times. I'm not saying that it's done on purpose, but I think that definitely happens. At the same time, there are certain times where it's like all eyes are on me, right? You walk into the room and you're the only black person in the room. You can feel, people in their head, wheels turning, like, who is that? So I mean, yeah, that's part of the Utah experience.
Yeah, I think that's not always a negative. Sometimes you're invisible, and then sometimes you stand out because you are the only black person in the room or on this job or with the business or whatever the case. So sometimes that doesn't always work negatively. It can work positively as well. But like being invisible, yes, is a thing, and then also being very seen is a thing. So it plays both sides.
I think for me personally, being like a black female, I've always felt very seen, like everywhere I go, and like I know a good amount of people, and it's like, I mean, the thing that I've always resorted to, it's like, I mean, you won't see a whole lot of people that look like me, and even going outside of the state, people will be like, you're from Utah? Like, you stay in Utah? You, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is what they look like in Utah. I was like, honestly, no. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've always, in some moments I have felt invisible. I used to be on a swim team in high school, and I never noticed that I was the only black girl in what, like, these swim meet competitions have like 500 kids, until one day my dad showed up. He's black, and he was like, you're the only black girl here. I was like, I didn't notice that until you said that. But yeah, you're right.
I was at Mo Betta's in Draper, and there was a white guy. He adopted 2 black kids, and it was a really like pleasant conversation, because as I was walking out, I made it a point to talk to his children, and I was talking about football, and he's like, yeah, this, that, and the other, and it was a very pleasant conversation. And he grabbed me. He's like, whatever you do, stay in Utah. We need you. So there is a consciousness of good white people that know that there's an element that's missing, and I feel that even though that element's kind of missing, I feel there's a lot of people that actually want to see improvement. So that gives hope. So
They just don't know how.
exactly.
And that's something that I have been preaching a lot recently, is like, okay, we want change, so the change has to stem from us, right? We can't be like, oh, I'm not going to tell them or educate them about like what it is to be a person of color in this state, because how are they supposed to, like, you know what I'm saying, understand that it's half and half, you know what I'm saying? You have to want to be able to teach and reach out to people, and they have to be willing to accept and learn about people of color.
As we're discussing this, and this question that Robin asked, I can't help but think that there are times when all of you feel, when you're not seen, how lonely that must get.
It can get that way. And we can go days without seeing no one that looks like you in some way. So that sometimes it's like, yeah. Well, I don't. I get to see black people.
You come to work, just come back to work, Ramon. You'll find them.
If I leave here, then sometimes it's difficult.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that loneliness? I mean, and I mean, Kelly Owens, who was here last time, talked about, turning a negative into a positive. How do you deal with that loneliness and then turn it around so that you don't feel quite so lonely?
I just try to stay close to my black friends. That's the biggest thing for me. And then other things like, I don't live near this barbershop, but I come here every week. I can get my hair cut down in Orem, which is 45 minutes away, but I drive up here every week specifically for this environment, trying to get away from that loneliness.
Does it work?
To an extent, yeah. Certain events or just things that are going on will sort of increase those feelings. During the summer of 2020, I was hosting racial discussions at work, and specifically in the investments industry, it's even less diverse, and so that got lonely. Speaking to people about my humanity every day, well, not every day, but it was frequently, right, in a time that was just tough in general for black people, and the way that we were feeling, and the sadness and kind of the loneliness that even the country felt, whether you were in a place like Utah or not. But I mean, it does work definitely to stay around people who are like you and embrace the culture around you. So it works.
In terms of that, of feeling lonely and what leads to that, why do you think it is that you are not seen, and you wind up feeling not seen? What is it? What is the outside impetus for not being seen?
I think it's ignorance. I think it's ignorance in Utah. Like, I feel like one of the biggest issues is, like, we talk about racism, but I think the biggest thing is ignorance. Like, most people don't know. You can't relate because you've never experienced it. So, like, let's just give you, like, it's not my story, it's my sister, but, like, my sister was a cheerleader, and so something as simple as her hair, all the cheerleaders, you know, you style your hair in a certain way, and she'd have maybe braids, or maybe she has her short little fro, and so they would all, you know, kind of tell them what style their hair should be for the game. But just that little moment, whether she said it or not, like, she might not feel seen because I can't style my hair that way. Like, how do you want me to look like? But there's no one else that looks like her. And it's just little moments. It's not necessarily you coming up to someone or like walking past them. It's little moments in life that you're like, you wouldn't have said that or you wouldn't have done that, but you don't know any better. You don't know because you can't relate.
Can acknowledge the struggle of the difference.
For me, it's a little bit of ignorance, but at the same time is where you think you're better than somebody else. That's the only way you can't see somebody, is where you think that person is less than or you're better than that person. So, like, for my thing is I've never really experienced a lot of racism because I'm very ignorant and naive when it comes to stuff like that. It's like they don't pay my bills. You know, if you don't impact me in either way or touch my kids or my husband, then I'm good, you know? So I'm like, it sucks to be you, you know? That's how I say I'm like very ignorant, very naive, but when somebody comes like to my business for an interview and goes through me to find a manager does that make sense? That's where I felt not seen. And it's like, you know, they're like, well, I was looking for the manager. I'm like, I'm right here. So I will not say I'm right here. I'm like, oh, she went to Kenya 6 months ago. She's not going to be coming for a year. Because it's like, who are you looking for? Like, they must be looking for somebody else to interview them. But I only saw that actually I saw them in both. Whether I was interviewing a black person and a white person, but it was more prevalent in a white person. So I think it's when somebody thinks they're better than you, that's when they don't see you.
Or make assumptions about you. Yeah.
Because I think like when I think I said this last year, like when I was up at the U and the Department of Veteran Affairs, and I'm surrounded by all these other like white doctors and stuff, and they're like, oh, so what do you do? I'm like, I have a doctorate as well. And they're like, oh, so I think the expectation of what they think in their mind, what you're supposed to look like at that particular, that career path, whatever, doesn't add up. And then I'm kind of guilty of it, but I'm like, I'm good. Like I'm here. I went through the same thing you went through, and I think that's part of it. What they expect in their mind isn't what they see. And then when you tell them, some people are surprised, and then some people, I think it's just that they don't. There's a little bit of honesty there where they're just like, they're stuck in their ways. They don't know any better. I think you were kind of just saying that. They don't. In their mind, it's completely different than what they see, and in their mind, like, oh, there's not like, you know, black nurses or black doctors or black this or black that, and then it's easy to be like, well, that's messed up. But then you have to take a different perspective, like they probably never seen it. So, and it's easy to kind of embrace the I guess the stereotype, or in their minds, like everything that they do and everybody that they've been involved with is their color. You know what I mean? Especially in certain parts of Utah, there are no black people. So then they move up here or move certain parts of the valley or the city, and they're like, oh, well, I never seen the black optometrist, or so it's a new thing. I'm not making any excuses, but it's easy, and I feel like as African Americans, we are harder on ourselves to perform. One, because we're representing our culture, so we want to represent our culture well, and two, we're just harder on ourselves because it feels like we have to perform better than our white counterparts to get the recognition.
Well, that's part of the being seen part.
Yeah.
In order to be seen, sometimes you have to be outstanding. You can't just be regular in the midst. And it's numbers. It's a numbers thing, like you were saying. Like, it's nothing. It's what are we, if we've reached 2% black people here. So it's you definitely have to. We feel like we have to be outstanding in order to be seen. And sometimes that is put on us, like you're just you, unless you're something else.
I want to go back to something that Pamela and Brandon kind of touched on. Pamela, you were saying that, we as black people have to be willing to have conversations with white people, otherwise, how are they going to learn about our culture and what we experience? And you and I were talking about this earlier. And Brandon, you said summer of 2020, you were kind of giving like race talks at work. But I mean, is that not exhausting? Do you think that there's some onus on white people to kind of do the work themselves at this point? I mean, years and hundreds of years of oppression. And it's like, do you ever feel like, why do I have to explain myself? Why can't you just be a little open-minded and read a book?
Well, now there's an idea.
I've had this conversation a lot with people, because when I went, also going back to California, that was what I've heard a lot, was like, why do I have to explain myself? I'm not going to be the one representative of like the entire black culture. And it does get exhausting. Having a race talk drained me of like my entire day. But it also, I feel like you can't say everyone has to have the conversation. It's like, but also you shouldn't be shamed if you decide to have the conversation. So I've designated myself, like here, I guess in Utah, to be able to talk to people about black hair, black culture, wherever I can. I'll say, this is just my opinion. There's probably someone else with a different opinion. And I'm okay with having that conversation, depending on the day. But I think it's a give and a take. But I definitely think that other races have to be able to do their part, and maybe like actually go and participate in other events, or like you said, read a book. Just try a little bit harder, because you can't just ask me everything about black culture in one moment and give you like a mini TED talk and then you just know everything. So
1,000% it has to do with like other people wanting to learn about other cultures. But I've sat myself down and I said, what do I know about the Japanese culture? What do I know about the Chinese culture? Have I stepped out and tried to branch out to other people that aren't white or aren't black? When have you guys ever stepped out and be like, let me read a book about Chinese people? Like, that just doesn't happen. At least it doesn't happen for me. I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you that I go out and look into other cultures. I do a little bit, but maybe not to the extent that I should, in being aware of other people that are around me. So, of course, it gets exhausting and all that stuff, but I come back to myself and I tell myself, is this the life that I want my kids to be in? Is this the life that I want my kids' kids to be in? Martin Luther King didn't do it just for him. He did it for everybody. He did it for everybody else around him, for the generations to come. So, again, if you want change, then you have to go out and promote it. And of course that sucks and it gets tired, but it's not for you. It's for everybody else. It's for the development. It's for the culture. It's for the people. You know what I'm saying? If you want to sit at home and complain about how someone called you a bad word when you were out at the grocery store, then go out and do something about it. People were like, why do Black lives matter? Why does nobody else's life? Because I'm out here promoting that my life matters and my children's life matters. So if you want to promote that your life matters and other people's lives matters, then go do that and educate people on what that is.
Rebecca, weigh in here. Do you get tired sometimes?
Oh yeah, and I feel like it gets kind of tricky too, because people are saying you can only tell someone so much until they want to learn. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. And so it's just sometimes it takes like something big in the news for someone to even like consider thinking to like, oh, let me explore this, or like let me see what from their point of view. And so it's just kind of hard because it's like, yeah, you can go out of your way, but sometimes it takes something huge for someone to finally see, oh, maybe I should take a look into this. And so it's just kind of, yeah, it's tricky because you do get tired of saying it over and over, but you don't know how long it's going to take them to actually listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and part of what got so frustrating that summer was the idea that I could share my experiences and tell them my story, and this was kind of a twofold response, but I get a lot of responses like, oh man, I didn't know that was still happening to people. I feel bad, what can I do to change? And the stories that I was telling were not all that unique, and it's the same stories in a much lesser way than what we were supposed to have learned during Black History Month, just like with Martin Luther King. Those are my experiences, and so for someone to say, oh, I didn't know that was happening, it's just like, where have you been the entire time that Black people have been in America if you're saying right now that you didn't know that this was happening? And so that's where it gets exhausting, is at some point someone's told you something like this before, and now you're coming to me like, oh man, Brandon, I didn't know. Which is good because it's just like, okay, now you have an opportunity, but at the same time it's exhausting for me because it's like, okay, in 5 years if something pops up and someone's telling you this again, where is your head going to be? Did you absorb that information?
I think that, because we always say Martin Luther King, African American history, but I think I like to take a different approach. I think instead of saying like, hey, inclusion is great, Dr. Martin Luther King vision of inclusion, great. But I think when it comes to like educating the Black youth in the home, I like the Malcolm X approach with learning how to love your Blackness. And if you have that strong foundation, it's easier to deal with the world by loving yourself and teaching your kids how to love their Blackness.
Extrapolate that. What happens? Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't think of a better word, but where does that lead us? When you love your Blackness and you teach your children to love theirs, then what then is the end result at the end?
This is the end result, right here, right there. You have strong, beautiful Black women, not the ones you see on TV wilding out, right? Like we have great representation of our culture, but I guarantee you her mother taught her how to love herself, to love her Blackness. She has African earrings on, like that. She's proud, she's prideful, and it starts in the home. Being Black is like putting on armor to deal with the world every day, right? So it starts in the home, and loving your Blackness, your parents provide you with the armor, right? And now you can go in the world and you can educate. It does get exhausting, but every day she has to put on that armor. Am I lying? Or it's and I know this only, well, I'm a psychologist, so I got the cheat sheet. But at the same time, I'm a Black man, right? And I see my wife is a Black woman, and I see that she has to go out in the world and she has to put on the same armor as myself. But I was brought up, hey, love your Blackness, embrace the things about your culture that are beautiful. And when you go out, it's fine to have white friends and stuff like that and teach, because all white people aren't evil. Like, well, I said all aren't evil, like they all are. But all people, yeah, some are, but there's people that are willing to learn. And I have my boss, amazing guy, Jared Chappell. He has 3 adopted kids and 3 adopted Black children, and he goes out of his way to make sure that they know their culture. And that's what we need. It's not we're Black and we're special, learn. It's just, hey, treat us how you would treat anybody else. And that's essentially it. Like, I'm not special because I'm Black, but at the same time, I just want to be treated with respect, right? I want the same opportunities, base things off like Dr. Martin Luther King said, off of your character. And I think if Black people felt that they were being judged off of their character, because we're all judged, it would be less that we would probably even be having this conversation.
Black men in Utah and Black women in Utah are treated differently. Talk to me about that. See, smiles.
Long conversation.
I was actually going to bring that up. So I think my husband has it more, or my son not that much. Maybe he doesn't tell me, but my husband has had it more than me. Born and raised in Kenya, moved here, went to school to be a nurse, and very good nurse, like exceptional. And so when he's at the hospital, he decided to go into hospice, and there is so many racist people in their last days. I'm like, do you really care who helps you? Like, you can actually see color at your last days? Like, literally. You find somebody come and ask, where is the real nurse? I'm like, what do you mean? What did they think you are? And he says they thought he was a CNA coming to give them, you know, whatever they needed. And I'm like, why would they think you're a CNA? Well, he's like, because I'm black. I'm like, I wouldn't have thought something like that, you know? So he has had that come up in the medical a lot. I did not know people in the medical were the same way, but he's had a lot of discrimination in as a nurse. And like Ramon said, he has had to be really good at what he does for him to even get a chance, you know? So like he can literally draw blood maybe with his eyes shut, you know? And but you find somebody saying, no, I want the real nurse. And so he's had it more than us. I think even my son has had it more than my girls, but like I said, they might not tell me what's going on, but I think men have had it.
Esther, do you sense a difference between the way you were treated and your brother or your father?
It's a tough one to like weigh the black man versus the black woman, because I think it depends on the situation. I feel like when it comes to like safety, sometimes like I get worried sometimes more for my brother than for myself, even though I'm a woman, because black men get shot all the time, and so then I feel like black men get seen more as a threat, and then black women are seen more as weak, and so there's a difference there, but still not necessarily a different outcome. And then, but I also believe that women sometimes always have it harder, but maybe that's again like my own bias.
How so? Tell us how so.
Well, I always like remember the quote, which I hope I don't butcher. I think it's also from Malcolm X, which is like the most disrespected and neglected person is the black woman. And I agree, because it was like, you know, it was already hard for black people to move up, and then the black man kind of moved up, let's say, whether it was like voting, and then the black woman was still there. And like we're always last to get either rights or respect. And so it doesn't demean or like mean that black men also don't struggle, but sometimes I think we just struggle a little bit more sometimes.
I think it can be different in different situations, because I remember growing up, in a sense, like black men were always idolized because they were the football players, they were the basketball players, they were, you know, and I did those things too, but they were like, oh, you know, this big strong guy, you know what I'm saying, he's gonna carry the team. The track coach was always looking for the black guy that was gonna run the fastest, you know what I'm saying. And I think there's no in between with like a black male. Is like you either idolize him or you're afraid of him, because he's either a superstar like athlete or he's a thug that's gonna rob you, you know what I'm saying. So you don't get an in between where like as women, like I don't get either side. I usually just get like oh, that's a mysterious creature, you know what I'm saying. Like, should I, you know, is she gonna be an angry black woman, or is she gonna be like one of those Southern hospitality women who's gonna take you in and love you no matter what, you know what I'm saying. And those are the different like perspectives that we get being a man and being a woman. And like people even to this day from my high school apologize to me, you know, I'm sorry I had this perception of you, I'm sorry I didn't know how to approach you, versus like, you know, the captain of the football team where they're like, hey, you know what I'm saying. And me, it was like, where do I stand? Where do I go? I feel a little more lost, because at least like as a black male, you know where you stand. You know, like everybody thinks I'm scary, or everyone thinks I'm the superhero. I'm kind of like, I don't know what people think of me.
I think black women have it harder because they have to take on our pain too. And what I mean by that is that you guys just had the example. It's like she was saying that like she feels a certain way about being a black woman, but she's also worried about her brother. So I feel like black women have it harder because if you look at history, right, when women's rights, right, black women couldn't tally around just women's right because they're black first, so they had to join the cause. You as a wife and your husband, you take on some of the things that he takes on. So I feel like black women definitely have it harder because they not only take on everything that a black man takes on, but they're also our comfort with dealing with the things that we deal with as black men. So.
Well, I agree with all of that. I think a major part of it is black men are more attractive to white women than black women are attracted to white men.
Or vice versa.
Well, I'm just, yeah. Well, I didn't want. I know it's a. Well, I'm just talking about in Salt Lake City because I got a lot of friends, especially my brown skinned sisters that don't get. They're not. You know, they get insecurities because they're not viewed as beautiful by white men. But you know, more white women are more. It's easier for them to find a black man attractive than they would the sisters, and I'm talking about Salt Lake City. So sisters feel kind of left out because the brothers, we go with the white girls sometimes, or there's more to choose from. So it seems like they're left out. You know what I'm saying?
Well, because they fetishize black men.
Well,
you know what I'm
that's
saying?
what
Like
we're
I said,
getting at.
it goes back to like that. Ooh, like this big guy. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to, you know, and there's like a sense of like manlyhood that comes behind it. Like they're seen as right. They always say like black women and black men are seen as stronger. They're able to withhold more, and sometimes like that's what attracts females, right? Someone who holds themselves as someone who's stronger, can take in a lot. And so I mean, I think that's another reason why a lot of races are drawn to black men, because they've always been strong, right? They had us working in the field. We were the ones doing the strong work. So I think everyone's attracted to that. But then we're like, okay, like, I mean, where does that leave us? Because now you have someone like, I had like girls doing the boys' homework, taking them this, taking them there. I'm like, I'm not gonna do your homework. Like, I have my own homework I have to do, but obviously you're gonna go choose someone who's gonna do your homework. Like, that's fine.
But it's colorism as well.
Absolutely.
And like you're light skinned, and it's like you see the light skinned girls in the media, and yeah, you guys are beautiful, but you don't.
Universally beautiful.
But you yeah, it's like obviously black is a spectrum of beautiful colors.
Right.
But how often do you see beautiful women your color, that's represented? Like you don't.
Exactly.
Darker skinned black women, they're not seen, they're not broadcast in the light as, it's like, we want a black girl, she gotta be light skinned. Or I've heard white, I've heard white dudes like, yeah man, she was a light skin, or and I have a light skinned son, and I'm guilty of saying this, I have a light skinned son, but he has a dark skinned personality. And I shouldn't say that, but it's just and no disrespect, I just view light skinned guys as soft. You know what I mean? I'm a strong black dude, and I like my chocolate skin. You know what I mean? I love being dark. I love it. You know what I mean? So, and my son is your color, and then I'm just like, you acting like Drake right now. Like, you need to stop it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm making fun of it. I'm making fun of it, but it is, and I feel like there's like this colorism spectrum where I feel like if you're not light enough, then you're forgotten about, and I think it's
Or not seen.
And I think light skin to dark skin to dark skin is beautiful, and it needs to be seen to the world that way, not just like.
Well, then I have a question then, because do you think in a place like Utah, where there's so few of us anyway, that a spectrum even matters to white people, that whether you're light skin or dark skin? do you think they just see you as black and?
Yes, in certain things, but like I was specifically talking about what's considered beautiful, and that's an America thing.
Sure.
You know, what we see is only the light-skinned sisters and all that stuff. So, but I think in Utah, I think if you're light-skinned and pretty and got nice, you know, nice hair, what's considered nice hair, you know, then that's viewed a little bit different than the brown-skinned sister with the natural curl.
You think that makes a difference here? Okay.
It definitely does. I'm with you on that, Ramon. And it's I don't know. I feel that if you're a dark-skinned woman in Utah, you deal with things different. Or you're gonna deal with things different, or not. You're not gonna deal with things differently. People are gonna view you differently, in a sense.
And
So-
that's hard for us too, because like me personally, I've always felt outcasted even from people who are brown. Because it's like, I went to school at Weber State, and we have a lot of people who come out of state. So a lot of people get along with me because I'm a light-skinned girl. All the football players like me and stuff like that. But I came around, and the basketball girls didn't like me. The other girls didn't like me that it came from California, because they were like, oh, she talks more proper, or you know, she's light-skinned, so she thinks she's better than us automatically. Let's cut her out, rather than trying to figure out who I am. They have we have a lot of refugees, right? And I go to church with some refugees as well. And some of them are not accepting of me. They have their own like little community, and it's because they automatically, like, at least I've heard that in African cultures, they bash on African Americans because they say that, you know, all they have to watch is the social media. You see the rappers, you see the people committing crimes and all that other stuff, and they base all of their beliefs on African Americans based off what they see on TV. And then I come here and, like, you know, at least, like, not to like be that person, but like, they have a community to go back to. I don't have a community to go back to because I'm mixed. So I'm like, I have no idea where I go, especially in Utah, right? So there's the white people, they don't take me. You know, the Africans, they don't take me. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do I go? Like, and it's like, I don't personally see myself as better or prettier or anything like that. I just want to be able to relate to people who share a similar complexion to me, and I don't even get that.
No, I get it. You're like, you two are, even Ramon. I mean, well, maybe not Ramon, but you guys are racially ambiguous. So it's like, you could be anything. You're black, so there's no, you know what I mean? It's like, you could say you're Puerto Rican. You could say you're Puerto Rican. I'm black. Like, you know what I mean? Ramon's like, but it is. So it's like, oh, like somebody's probably come to you like, what are you? Or like, what?
Yeah. Where do you fit in?
They don't
you know?
do that to you. You're like, you black. Like, you know what I mean? So I get where you're coming from though. Absolutely. And in essence, to like brothers, it's like, I really hate the negative, I guess, stereotypes of like, oh, he's aggressive. Like, I really
Get that here.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Really?
when you attach aggressiveness to a black man, it's like calling him the N-word. It really is. It's like, don't associate. Like, it's condescending. You know, it's like aggressive, big, strong. It's a nasty taste in your mouth, because you don't hear that about guys of other races. Like, oh, they're aggressive.
Well, you can't even have a discussion, a disagreement, without being considered aggressive.
Or a threat.
Or a threat.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't use any kind of foul language towards you. So why are you being threatened by me right now? Yeah. And that's a big thing here too.
Let's talk about critical race theory, because it comes up a lot. It's been dealt with at the legislature in recent years, and you hear that term used quite a bit. First, before we do that, though, help me to understand a definition, a clear definition of critical race theory. Brandon.
Sure. It is the study of how legislatively or systemically racism has been used, and therefore how it still affects people today.
Okay.
I don't know if that's by the dictionary, but I think that's pretty close.
I thought you articulated that very well, sir.
as an addendum to that, Bob, I just want to add for the people who will see this, critical race theory is not taught in primary school, secondary education, and not even at the undergraduate level. It's a graduate level type study, and I just think it's so interesting that we've kind of had like the contention that we've had around this when it's not being taught to our children in schools.
Well, and in truth, I get the sense that people are going, critical race theory, you know, because they don't really understand what it is.
Exactly.
So, so help our viewers to understand the value of critical race theory. What does it teach, and how should people who are my color view that whole CRT issue?
I mean, I don't think really too many people have education on it because it is not being taught anywhere. So I don't think that's a black or a white thing. I think that's just a system thing, and we need to progress in that way because, especially in the education, we get no black education in Salt Lake. It's an American thing too, but especially in Salt Lake's education, we hear about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks didn't move off the bus, and that's about it for Black history. When it's really our history is American history, so there should be more. So I don't know if really too many people know what critical race theory is, not just white or black.
Sure. Well, maybe we look at it from this perspective, because a lot of the history we're taught in schools is very Eurocentric, right? So there's been a lot of pushback lately about Black history being taught as just like a regular part of your lesson plan or your curriculum. There's just been like that basic, like, you're making my kid feel guilty talking about Black history. There's just that. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
A couple things with that is whenever you're studying history, having a discussion about history, I feel like it'd be very difficult to have that discussion throughout any point in history and not be uncomfortable at some point, right? You can't even read the Bible and not be uncomfortable at some point. You're going to be confronted with things that are difficult, that are gruesome and things like that. And so why are we steering ourselves away from that bit of discomfort when it comes to Black history? It's so difficult to fix a problem if you don't know the origin of the problem or really understand it, and that is the basics of Black history, let alone when you get into CRT and making those direct connections to what it is today. But can we at least get some context for Black history and what's going on so that we can attempt to try to tackle some issues?
And I think the biggest thing is that it's still recent and present. If you completely ignore the fact that there was a Black history, you know, there's a kid that's going to be like, Mommy, why is that person treating that person differently? What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? At that point, you have to answer it and explain the history. Now, if we were past that, maybe I'd understand the lessening of education behind it, because there's no reason to really educate somebody on why we were being treated differently and now everything's different. Like, maybe lessen it in that aspect, but the fact that it's still happening, it needs to be like, there needs to be some kind of connection even for kids to be like, oh, there's things that are changing, and then there's also things that are okay and not okay because these things are not being taught at home.
I think white guilt prohibits like a productive conversation. Like you were just saying, well, my kid is going to feel like they did something wrong. It's not about you. And so I'm like, if you can remove yourself from that and be able to hear and listen to the story and the history, then we can now have a productive conversation on what to do next. And I think that's really like a big problem. People get defensive, and it's not even about them. I just want to tell you about where I came from. I want to tell you where other people came from, and we can figure out how to not make that happen again.
I agree. I feel like it's a packaging deal, and what I mean by that is critical race theory, right? It's like, oh, let's stay away from that. I think it's the way that it's packaged, right? If you were just to do history, with Black history being included in just American history, people would have less of a problem with it.
I don't think so, though, because I think that's kind of like what people have been trying to say, and it's still like, we don't want that. Why are you teaching Black history?
Well, if you're teaching history in general and you're including the dark, it just included, because people have a problem with, like if I said, shut up, be like, what? But I was like, can you please be quiet? It's
Same
still
thing.
it's still getting right. So
Right.
I think people, it's the way that it's delivered, and people were just like, oh, critical race theory. Oh,
Yeah, let's
you know,
just take the
it's-
black history off.
Yeah. So
And just make it what it
and we
is.
have to normalize studying Black history throughout the year, not just in February. You know what I mean? It's somebody. Oh, so no, I think it is. You're right. You're still gonna get. You're right in the sense that you're still gonna get people that are gonna kind of be resistant. But I think just labeling it all American history, because I don't like the separation of Black history, because just as much as the Black part of the history, it's still history, right? There's, you know what I mean? So I think we should not separate Black history from it, but include it into all of it, and let the curriculum be something that is year round. Because one of the things that bugs me is like, oh, it's February, African, like I don't necessarily like that. I feel like Black people should be separated every month, you know. So and along, like, because the thing is like we know about Martin Luther King. I think you said the lady that was on the bus, Rosa Parks. But we're not talking about like Marcus Garvey or Du Bois or Frederick Douglass or simply like the leaders of yesteryear, right? Like, I mean, I feel like there's some of our heroes like Whitney Houston. Yeah, I know she's like a singer, but she was paramount in the music industry. People like Nicki Minaj and all those other people wouldn't exist if it wasn't for people like her, Shaka Khan, or, you know. So I think that
And before them, Aretha Franklin,
Franklin,
and
yes.
Gladys Knight, and all those guys.
We need to celebrate our heroes instead of just slavery. They're like, Black people have done so much in history. One of my favorite is George Washington Carver. People are like, who is that? Like, it's when you really get deep into learning your history. I feel like it's something that can be shared, where it's just like, you know, some white people are like, oh, it's slavery. You know, it's like there's so much cool stuff to like Black people, and I feel like a lot of white culture is Black culture. If you look at it, if you look at these younger kids, they know, they're immersed in the culture, like you were saying. Like, I feel like the younger generation and my generation are responsible for moving that needle. It's just that we're too busy on our phones with social media and stuff like that. But,
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole like Black history thing, like, you know, you show up to class one day and they're like, okay, we're talking about Black history today. You know what I'm saying? Rather than like, when you go to a history class, there's a timeline, right? So they're like, we're in this history class, we're talking about from the 1900s until today, right? So why don't we follow that timeline? Like, you know, in 1990, you know, a Black person, and don't even say like a Black person, this person invented this, and they have, I mean, don't even mention that, just people will see that it was a person of color that did it in the timeline that it happened. Next thing you know, it's the Warner Brothers that did like the flying and stuff like that. Was it what? Was
Wright
that
Brothers.
Wright Brothers. My bad. The Wright Brothers. You know, like follow it in a timeline rather than take like a week or a day and just, you know, try to hammer down like Black history, because Black history is also part of our history. We wouldn't have these lights on right now if it wasn't for Black creators and people of that sort. But just in that way, follow the timeline. You don't have to be like, pick out all the times when someone Black did something special and make a day out of it.
So I kind of wish that approach would be enough, just in sort of like blending Black history into the rest of the way American history is taught. The problem is that we have been suppressed and not allowed to do so many things within the history of this country that the major events that happened, we were not a controlling factor in. We didn't make the decisions to go to war. We didn't make decisions to stop a war. We didn't make any of those decisions. And so it can very easily get lost. Like our history can very easily get lost within that time frame. And so you do need those extra moments where you say, hey, Black people were doing this at this time, and also this was being done to Black people at this time. We do need those special times where we say, hey, we need to learn this part of American history that's not, you know, just doesn't jump off the page in terms of American history.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it doesn't have to be spotlighted as Black history, though. Like, okay, we're gonna take this time and make it. So I know what you're saying. Like, it should be those moments, but it shouldn't be. It should just be called history.
Right.
And then while you're including that in the history, then while we're learning that was Black history. Like the Tuskegee Airmen, those was Black men.
You get young children too, who, if you're teaching this curriculum from, let's just say, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, right, and all they're hearing typically is just brutal treatment of Blacks, then it kind of brainwashes them to think like, dang, like we just went through this horrible time. But it's like you have to highlight the accolades of the greatness that our culture brings. Like our culture brings so much more than just our past, right? Because if we're always focusing on our past, I think moving into the future, we're just like, oh, certain things we accept because, you know, I learned this through high school or through middle school, high school, where we were just slaves. It's great to know where you come from, but it's also great to know where you're going, because that kids that's learning about like, oh, my people was oppressed, they also have some light there where it's like, oh, well, James Brown did this, or you know, E.B. Du Bois did this, or you know, you have to incorporate both. And I think even when I was going to school, it was more of a concentration on slavery and the Underground Railroad, and you know, but then and you hear about places like Rosewood and all these just brutal things, Emmett Till, but it's just like, okay, what about Thurgood Marshall? Like he became the Supreme Justice and stuff like that. Like those are things like we have to highlight both. And I feel like in the Utah system, you just learn about the battlement of what like Black people went through without learning about the accolades of what makes your people so great.
Right. There's more into Black history than slavery and marching.
So
And marching, yeah, exactly.
yeah. So then, when we look at critical race theory, is it as valuable as is it more valuable? And this is to Brandon's point. Is it more valuable to teach critical race theory on a more broad spectrum, or is it a better approach to incorporate all of the accomplishments of the Black community and everything along the way in regular history?
I think it'll take a little bit of both in order to integrate that.
I think it should be. I think critical race theory, if it was going to be taught, it should be at a level where the students can comprehend such. It's not. I mean, you just said it yourself. It's. I think it's a comprehension thing more so than it's just like kids learning critical race theory at such a young age. I think it's going to be wasted.
Yeah, it doesn't
more.
compute.
There you go. So when you're mature enough to be able to compute and comprehend such, you know, drastic, because it's something that I think that takes a lot of cognition. And I feel like the average like 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, they just want to go outside and play. So
That's true.
There are certain elements of even, I mean, and I'm not even saying that these things should be taught in elementary, because that's not even an issue right now. It's just really Black history being taught in elementary because critical race theory isn't being taught. But there are different elements of even critical race theory that can be taught to very young ages. Like you could say, hey, there was a time in this country where the government wouldn't allow Black people to live in certain areas. A lot of Black people still live in those areas right now today and suffer. That's an example of critical race theory. It's not overly complicated. It's very simple. That if you wanted to, you could teach the kids, right?
But what age do you teach that? Because I know like children age like 5th and 6th graders, they don't care about that.
But it's not that they don't care, but like you can teach that to them. They don't care about a lot of history that's going on. But like that is a concept that they can understand
I
if
think
you
you
want
should
to teach
probably
them
just
that.
start
But I
with
think
cultural appropriation.
There you go. Something simple, like something, because it's like, you know, you teach, well, hey, you know, I think you just break it down to something. You have to think like a 4-year-old, like, right? If I was a 4-year-old, right, my world is completely different as a 4-year-old as an adult, right? As a 4-year-old, I'm gonna want to play with the plugs, so that's why parents put plug protectors in it, right? You have to think at the age of a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old. Like that's my thing. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying comprehension is paramount when it comes to teaching these things, right? So like you're not gonna teach your your 7-year-old about sex, right? Like you're not gonna do that. You're gonna wait until they're older to comprehend, and then they can make that decision.
Well,
right?
they still have
So,
There's
but you
levels,
still have
there's
lower
levels,
like
there's
don't
levels.
let
Right.
anyone touch you, right? Like you can
Right.
start with something. So my thing
That's
is
what
just
he said.
start yes. But I get what you're saying, but I'm saying at what point, right? And that's why you need black people in our school system, superintendents and stuff like that. So there's a person to kind of not be security or whatever, but kind of
Accountability.
yeah, to have a accountability, because a lot of things are out of control because people are making decisions that aren't black or Hispanic or of that color, so they don't know any better, right? And then you're teaching, college level critical race theory to a kid that's in 6th grade. It just doesn't compute.
And I think that's difficult too because like where you brought up there's no black representation. Like I also model, so it's just like, are you that black person that they chose for like the group to look good? You know what I'm saying? Like, hurry, we need like a smart black person to come join over here so then we don't look like we're racist. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do you stop? Where do you stop and start that? Like the whole like, okay, we want more people to be included, but we also don't want to put someone's race above their education.
There was a lady, I forgot her first name, something Jean. She did the brown eye, blue eye study, right? That made sense because it was something that they could comprehend. Kids at like various ages, their comprehension is more about feelings. They know how they feel, but they don't know how to kind of, you know what I mean? So all those kids that had blue eyes, they felt different. No, like it's like, well, maybe this is how black people feel when you do, because that's essentially what it was about. So I think when it comes to learning about critical race theory, it should be in a point where the child should be able to comprehend and learn that dealing with people from different cultures, right? Like there's a way that you respect people regardless of their culture, right? Or just being respectful. And I think that's where it starts. You have to start with anything. You start in the basics, right? You start at the basics, right? When you learn how to talk, you babble, right? You babble, then you say mom or dad, and that's how you have to treat issues like this. You have to start at the basis of learning that, you have to respect people. And I think that's what it all comes to. Like essentially just black people just want to be respected.
Any other thoughts on critical race theory before we move?
I don't think it has to start being critical, though. I think it's the foundation that you start with, and then it becomes critical as you progress, just like any other education.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just think that it's very ironic that right now they're trying to pass legislation to keep us from learning about the legislation that was passed to keep black people in secluded areas, right? It's just the irony in that is frustrating.
Robin got here just after the Donovan Mitchell revelations came out. I say that like it was some kind of, bad thing. It wasn't. But and I know there were some in the white community that were surprised that Donovan would say that. I mean, we all love Donovan. He's a great guy. We love him. But he said that it was exhausting, and in much of what we've talked about before. Let's talk about the effect of Donovan saying that on the overall issue of moving the needle. I mean, he was just talking from his heart.
He said, "It's no secret there's a lot of stuff that I dealt with being in Utah off the floor. If I'm being honest with you, I never really said this, but it was draining. It was just draining on my energy. Man, it was just one thing after another. To receive the amount of pushback I got over the years, it was a lot. I'm just like, y'all have no idea. I took on a lot because I felt like I could do it, but at some point it became a lot to have to deal with."
Now, in that, he's talking about not only the everyday, ordinary kinds of things that all of you deal with, but he's also talking about Izzy Tishner, because I remember he was a voice on that when she took her life. And he really did come to, become the de facto voice black community in Utah. How do you feel about what he said?
Accurate.
I feel bad for him. That's unfair to have to carry that burden. Just becoming the voice of an entire group of people, a group of people that is diverse. Within our own culture, we're not one homogenous group, and he's, it kind of takes on that responsibility as the most famous person in Utah. That's a lot.
What do you think of the reaction he got? I think the word I heard the most was ungrateful.
Well, and that's what I was going to touch on. Like, they feel like because he got paid, he gets paid a lot, which he gets paid to be a basketball player. He doesn't get paid to be the voice of. So, like, when you get paid all this money, you should be okay with having to deal some of the stuff that you deal with, which is, like you said, it's unfair. So, to say somebody's ungrateful for them to shoulder something that they really don't have to is unfair.
I hear "shut up and dribble."
That's all over that.
Yeah, which is awful and again frustrating and honestly, I mean it's not that overt racism, but that's real close to bumping up against it. Like, you better dance or dribble a ball or do something to come entertain us, or just be quiet.
Takes you back to like a slave mentality. It's like, yeah, you work hard, but you have a cabin back there. We feed you and we clothe you. So take it, like, and he's a human, and like you guys are just saying, it's like he's, to have that burden on him to, and I'll take it like deeper, like he had to represent himself in orderly fashion every day as well. Like he couldn't, go out and act a fool, like, so those are the other thing. Not that saying like that's exhausting.
Just
but
have a reaction. He couldn't
right.
have a reaction.
He couldn't react, and I remember there was a guy that got into an accident downtown, and he like got out of the car. He's a person, you know what I mean? And I think people have a skewed view on like what, like they own him, you know what I mean? And it's just like he's a person too. So
I think off of that too is a big thing is people love black culture, but they don't love everything that comes with it. So it's like they love the entertainment that we get from watching sports. They love listening to the music like the artists provide, but they don't want to see the other part of it that they have to go through as well. And they just kind of pick and choose what they want to acknowledge and what they want to see.
There's a T-shirt that says "Everybody wants to be black, but don't nobody want to be black," and that's gonna win. Like all of the glamour stuff, but the underlying stuff, nobody wants to deal with that stuff or even talk about it.
And I think it speaks to sort of a lack of accountability almost, right? So I mean, people felt attacked, like their culture and their way of life was attacked, right? And I would like to think that if someone is within your home and they say, hey, I was mistreated, that you could take a step back and like, hey, how am I contributing to this? How can I make my house better? But instead it's the opposite, right? And I mean, we all should be doing this. Like, I know as a heterosexual male, I have that privilege. And so, when I hear a woman talk about her struggles going through life, it is my responsibility and I need to take accountability for that to make sure that I'm not contributing to that. And people don't necessarily do that in general, and then specifically here in Utah when it comes to black people.
And I think the better reaction would have been if it was compassion and empathy. That that's how it should have came off, but the opposite was the result of that. And like you were just saying, it's like it's beautiful to see that, like, that white people love like black culture and other people love like black culture, but it's like you gotta love it all. Either love it all or love it at all. Like, don't go half-heartedly. Like,
They only love it when it benefits
yeah, like, if you love hip hop, if you love this, if you're a white girl, you love black men or whatever, don't just be there for the good times. Like, be there, be consistent. And I think that's one of the things I feel like in our culture as black people, we're so forgiving, we're so loving, but I feel like it's not reciprocated when we're going through things. So
A lot of his teammates or former teammates reacted after he said that, like other black players, and they were essentially like, well, I've never experienced that. Like, people here have been so nice and welcoming to me. Do you think it kind of hurts that accountability that you mentioned, Brandon, when, here he is saying, like, this is my experience, it was exhausting, it was draining, and then you have other black people who are like, oh, actually, I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it does, and again, that's almost like a different type of accountability. So why would you, if you hear someone else have a struggle, even if you haven't had that exact same one, like all of our experiences in here as black people, we have different ones. I'm not gonna go out and if she says something where she was offended by, I'm not gonna stand up and say, that's never happened to me. It's just like, just appreciate her perspective and leave it alone. Why are you speaking up and taking something away from another person's experience? So yeah, I didn't appreciate that.
You don't want to like belittle it and almost make it seem like it's not as big of a deal.
Or like it didn't happen at all.
But I think the bigger thing is that some people do things for the wrong reasons, and maybe they said that so that they could appease whoever, right? They seen the results of what Donovan said, the results of like the pushback, and they don't want to deal with it. So, and some people I respect Donovan for it. Is some people are just, they're gonna call it how they see it. They're gonna be honest, and then you have some people who are maybe like, well, I just got this spot on the team. I don't have time to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he didn't say while he was here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
He said it when he left.
Yeah.
Well, are we understanding each other and our cultures any better now in 2023 than we did in, say, 2022 or 2020? Are we understanding each other any better, Judy?
Yes and no. I think you just have to be like Donovan Mitchell and just do your part. There's a lot of people who are not gonna do anything because they don't wanna rock the boat. But I think if we can go and out there and educate as much as we can, yeah, it's tiring, but if we can be understanding too from our perspective, not to lash every single time somebody says something you think they don't understand, and try to be understanding from their point of view too, and try to educate as much as we can, and whoever doesn't, then you just move on. Because you can't please everybody. You can't please everybody.
Esther, your eyes are moving, you're thinking, I can tell.
I feel like understanding is gonna take a while, but I feel like we've taken a step because maybe like I feel like I've personally seen more people wanting to have a conversation, like with me, or asking questions. You can tell they get nervous about just asking about black hair or black culture. So I'll just say we're taking a step in them maybe wanting to understand.
How do you feel?
I mean, I have a lot of feelings, but I think kind of what Esther said, I think I've found that more people have been willing to have those conversations. I don't know that it's really changed anything one way or the other, but I mean, that's like a start, right? So if you're willing to talk to me, I'll share with you. Just please be willing to listen and don't negate my experience, like kind of what we were just talking about, like
Qualify it or excuse
exactly
whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. Because I just think we all want to understand each other. So I think I'm just asking for people to try to understand.
Last year, we talked about a quote at the end of the I Have a Dream speech for our folks who are new this year. And at the end of the speech, toward the end of the speech, Dr. King talked about falling into the trap of taking the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Do you remember that quote from last year? The tranquilizing drug of gradualism. And the consensus among this group last year was that yeah, we are guilty of taking that tranquilizing drug. But then on the other hand, we're dealing with such a deeply rooted and gargantuan problem or issue in some respects that it's going to be a slow burn. No matter what we do, it's going to be a slow burn. So how do we balance our approaches to understanding each other's cultures and embracing each other as brothers and sisters as we truly are? How do we do that without taking an overdose of the tranquilizing drug of gradualism, but then trying to blow some oxygen onto this fire so that it burns faster? How do we do that?
Well, we can lead with gratitude, right? And gratitude isn't just thanks. It's just lead with understanding and compassion. And I think that's not the answer to everything, but it's a great place to start. It's like, we're not looking at trying to get to the end of the book. We're trying to just get through the first couple of chapters. And as we get through those chapters, we'll learn something about each other, and we can utilize that to fulfill the next chapters. Because I felt like the temperature in the U.S. right now is a lot of people that are not Black or African American are starting to see things and put up with things that we've already dealt with. Like, oh, we don't trust the government. We don't trust doctors. Well, Black people have been like that. So now I feel like people are getting a real good look at some of the things that we've kind of had to deal with. And even though we're kind of displaced and there's all these different groups, I think that we all have a common goal of just trying to figure it out, right? And I think the to start is just to lead with compassion, understanding, learning how to see each other, learning how to respect each other, and that's a start.
Within the context of gradualism and making progress, I think that one of the things that we need to acknowledge and understand is that progress isn't linear, and progress is not inevitable. It's not a given. Like I said, when I was having those discussions at work, a common question that I would get, and I didn't understand it at the time, this is to America's situation, but people would ask me, okay, Brandon, why don't Black people just wait, right? And it was almost like they had a belief that progress and things get better in this country just like automatically. That's just what happens through time, and that's not. People put in work, people had to sacrifice, people died. People were active in trying to make this progress, and sometimes things got a lot worse before they got better. And so we need to be able to acknowledge that and not just say we can sit on our hands and things will just get better, right? That's not how any of this works.
So what do we do, Rebecca?
I think part of it is like we all have to work together, and it's like we can't just rely on one person, like one big entertainment person or one person to be the spokesperson. We all got to be doing our part so that we don't, the whole gradualism, we don't slowly kind of sink back and be like, oh, there's some changes made. And we all had to kind of, whether some parts might not be as big as having as big of a voice, but still making that conscious effort to make others aware as well, just around you in your circle too.
Especially in Utah, support other people, right? Like I said, even when I did my Juneteenth event, we said, okay, this is centered around like Black people of Utah for Black History Month, but realistically speaking, if all of our customers were Black, all Black businesses would fail. And even not all the Black people support other Black people. So if we can't even get our Black people to support us, like, how are we supposed to get our counterparts to do so? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, show up for your people, Like, if I know someone that needs a haircut, I'm telling them to come here. You know what I'm saying? If I know somebody needs psychological help, I'm telling them to come here. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is where we start those things. If we don't do those things for each other, then, like, how do we expect to get it from anywhere else?
It's true.
I would think it starts from home. So for the people who have kids, to just start from there, just educate your kids, talk it out at home, because like our kids will bring other kids with them, that are not black, you know, we have white kids, Japanese kids. I think any culture you can think of, and I think if we can discuss that in our homes and just make sure we start in our own homes, I think that will make a difference. And also, wherever we are at, whether it's church or work or other businesses that we own, have communities. If we can create small communities like little tribes and just make sure that we educate whoever we can educate and bring up stuff, I think it will make a difference.
That's true.
I've noticed like we talk a lot about like what everyone else is supposed to do, so I like that we're talking about kind of what we should be doing as well. And I feel like it's being unified, which is kind of what almost everyone has being said. Like there's a lot, what I've learned is that there's a lot to black culture. There's also African culture, there's black in America, then there's mixed. And so there's a lot of different pieces, and we're all unified, but there's also a lot of different parts that make up that one unit. And I think until we understand each other fully and we can support each other, it's really hard to progress. Like what I feel like I noticed in 2020 was that when the whole movement was going, we got everyone's attention, but I felt like it fizzled out and it went nowhere. And sometimes I feel like we don't know what we want to happen, but we know exactly what's wrong. So, but we can tell you for days what's going on and what's wrong, but we're not really sure what to do next, specifically with the system that's completely broken. So if we knew what we wanted and we could be unified in that mission, then that would actually, I think, move the needle.
I think mostly the people who have traveled outside of Utah, not St. George, or you know, I think
St. George doesn't count.
yes, St. George doesn't count. But I think people who have traveled a lot, whether it's outside of the state or outside of the country, they come back a little bit different than, and that's why, like for us, we sent our kids away. We encourage them to go out of state so they can live there, they can mingle with other people. You can attend whatever church you want, and they come different. They come different because in Utah you feel like you're almost raising kids here. It feels like you're in a bubble. So it's like, okay, go without our influence and kind of just fly and figure it out. So I think for people who travel, and if we can encourage people to travel more and learn other cultures that, like you said, it makes a huge difference. And that's why we actively take our kids to Kenya so they can see where they came from, like where their parents came from, and just go in like deep in the villages and try to figure it out. Like, why do other people live like this? Why do your parents think a certain way? Why are your parents strict in certain areas? So I think if we travel more, then we see more, and we embrace more, because I believe black people in other states will not answer the questions the same way as the people in Utah.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, Ramon. You get the last word. I think everybody got a chance, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm in
Okay,
agreement.
Ramon.
I'm in agreement with everybody.
No.
I think what bothers me is we have a lot of symbolic victories. We get a Black History Month, or we get a day or something like that, and so we're like, oh, we got something accomplished, but really nothing accomplished. Nothing was accomplished. That I think we have to look more to something greater than a song or a day or a month. We have to fight for something a little greater. I think that starts with the government and trying to push for more people that look like us in those places. But we have to start, like she said, in the home, and look to have more goals outside of basketball player or a singer, or we have to try to teach that it's good to try to fight from the inside and work our way up. That's it.
Robin, you get the last word.
I get the last
Yes, you.
Man.
You're the newbie.
Ugh. I mean, I think everyone made such poignant points and had a lot of good thoughts. To your point, my father's from Nigeria, and before I ever went there for the first time, I had traveled to a bunch of European countries and hadn't been back there. But man, I came back and I just haven't been the same, right? So I just think as Black people, African American people, it is very important to know your roots and remember it. That saying, you can't venture to the future if you don't know your past. So I think that's always something that's important to remember. And I think too, like everyone has said, we got to continue to do the work, and it is exhausting and it is tiring. But I guess, patience, and we got to keep chipping away.
I lied, I get the last word. The last word is thank you. Thank you very, very much for letting us explore these things with you and get your feelings and your opinions on this. I think more than anything else, we've got to keep talking. We've got to keep talking. And hopefully we'll be able to get together again, which is a good reason to support Ramon in his business so that we have a place to shoot things. And my deepest gratitude to each of you. We'll keep doing this. I promise we'll keep doing this, and we'll keep talking. And God bless you all. Thank you so much.